Vanakkam once again and warm greetings to you on behalf of Team Dentist Channel Online. It is the last show of day 2, but you can see how fresh we are because we are as energetic as you are. And the sole reason behind that is because of the next session we have scheduled for you. And it's indeed a pleasure to tell you we have a very special speaker once again from the beautiful city of Madurai. Most of you all know him as the implantologist that you have to go to when it comes to all your doubts with regards to implantologists. Still, it's my pleasure, privilege, and honor to welcome and invite our speaker, Dr. Senthil Murthy. A little bit about Dr. Senthil Murthy. We, Team Dentist Channel Online, had the opportunity to meet Dr. Senthil in one of the biggest implantology conferences in India that took place in Mumbai in the year 2019. The presentation that he gave was so soothing, was so touching, is the reason why we thought, why not have Dr. Senthil Murthy gracing this event with his skills, his expertise and experiences to all you lovely people who are watching us live. And hence I say that this is a very special session, not because of the kind of knowledge that he has, but the kind of work that he's been doing with regards to implantology, with regards to providing continual dental education, and with regards to the mentorship that he's giving to the budding as well as experienced implantologists from all across the globe. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting to you Dr. Senthil Murthy. A small introduction about Dr. Senthil Murthy since we are running short of time. Dr. Senthil Murthy is a consulting maxillofacial surgeon and an implantologist based in Madurai, India. Having completed his post-graduation in the field of maxillofacial surgery in the year 2009 at Government Dental College, Chennai, he completed various fellowships and training programs in maxillofacial surgery and implantology both in India and abroad. He has been associated with Speed Medical Institute for the past 9 years towards training dental graduates for postgraduate entrance exams. He has also authored a guide in maxillofacial surgery for entrance aspirants. He is the accredited member of the Royal College of Surgeons in Edinburgh, UK. He is an accredited member of both the national and the international boards of maxillofacial surgery. He was awarded as the Implantologist of the Year at the FAMDENT Awards 2018 that took place in Mumbai, India. He has presented various lectures in many regional and national forums as well as conferences. With 9 years of clinical experience, he is presently working as the Associate Professor in Oral Surgery at the CSI Dental College and Hospital and is also the Director of Murthy Dental and Maxillofacial Center, one of the premium institutions for dental implants, smile designing, and cosmetic facial surgeries in Madurai, Tamil Nadu, India. Ladies and gentlemen, it's once again a privilege and a great matter of pride for us, Dentist Channel Online, to have this prolific speaker with such vast experience and for the kind of leadership qualities that he has. Ladies and gentlemen, I think Dr. Senthil is having slight technical issues. In the meanwhile, I would quickly like you to introduce yourselves and to tell us which part of the city or state or which country are you joining us for the Zoom session. So if you are from Mumbai, please tell us you're joining us from Mumbai, India. If you're from the Middle East, if you're from Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Muscat, Saudi Arabia, from Qatar, Oman, Kuwait, etc., please tell us. Please tell us if you're joining us from various countries in Europe. You a quick flow of tomorrow's session. Tomorrow, the first lecture would be taken by Dr. Shiva Shankar, the Director of Confident India Dental Labs Private Limited. He would be talking about guided implant placement, precise and predictable restorations. Up next, we will be having Dr. Vijay Kumar, who will be talking about selection of the best CBCT and OPG machines for your practice. Up next, we will be having Dr. Sundar Well, who will be talking about tips and tricks in the practice of dental implantology. We will be having a speaker from Greece who will be talking about the ultimate solution for prosthetic components. We will be then having a speaker from Germany, Dr. Andreas Halamoda, who will be talking about simplified implant prosthetic solutions. We would be next having Dr. Giorgio Haddad from Germany, who will be talking about 3D printing in dentistry. And lastly, tomorrow we'll be having Dr. Henry Dietrich from Germany, who will be talking about immediate loading in the atrophied bone by a minimal invasive procedure. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, presenting to you Dr. Senthil Murthy live. Over to you, Dr. Senthil.
Thank you, Ruben. That was very kind words you offered to me. And shall I share my screen right away?
Yes, sir. Please share your screen.
Is my screen visible to all of you?
Yes, sir. It's visible now.
Okay. So thank you once again, Ruben and Dentist Channel Online. And it's a great opportunity to be a part of this mega dental virtual expo. And once again, an opportunity to meet a lot of people through the Zoom meeting. Something that this COVID-19 has taught us all is change is inevitable. And I'm sure every one of us have something or the other that has got changed over this past few months. And that holds good to implantology and dentistry as well. If you give a patient and ask to make a treatment plan when it comes to replacing missing tooth for a patient, the patient I saw 5 years back, if I'm going to make a treatment plan now, my thinking would have had a huge paradigm shift and my planning process would have been completely different. A good surgeon doesn't just concentrate on improving his technical abilities, but also on the appropriateness of what he does to a patient. So today, for the next 1 hour or so, I shall be talking on the topic of improving the outcomes in graftless rehabilitation. So a same patient, when given to two different surgeon or two different implantologists, they might come up with different solution, both of which may be absolutely fine for the patient as well as they are good treatment options for the patient. But the perspective of the doctors might be different from one person to the other. And that is what I am going to put forward to all of you. So my previous speaker, Dr. Shaurabh, has spoken so much about grafting solutions. And today, the next topic that I'm going to talk is about graftless. So we are two colleagues working together many a times with two opposite perspectives on doing the same treatment with implants. But whatever said and done, any treatment plan that you offer to your patient, I think when you give them with the best confidence within you, I'm sure your outcome is definitely going to be better and good. But something that has not changed over these years is what the patient wants. Whenever an Indian patient who comes into our office, you ask them whether you want a fixed teeth replacement or a removable replacement. Invariably, I'm sure all our patients are going to ask for a fixed teeth replacement. Probably the scenario might change when it goes to the European countries where people may opt for removable overdenture solutions. But here, most of our patients always look at going for fixed replacements. But it is our duty to decide which is the best modality of rehabilitation that the patient can have, which has less complications, which is the right solution for the patient. And something that we all know very well is that alveolar bone is going to resorb after extraction of tooth. And bone resorption is inevitable. There are plenty of studies to show that bone resorption is going to be a continuous process after loss of teeth. And we also know that when you place an implant onto an alveolar bone, implant has the innate potential of preventing bone resorption. So when you see a patient with a long-standing edentulosum, we describe that as an atrophic jaw. It's because of extensive bone resorption, the patient has alveolar atrophy. Apart from that, due to pneumatization of the maxillary sinus and reduction of bone density, increase in the softness of the bone, and as a result of all these changes, patient may end up with an altered jaw relation. So all of this is put together are the effects of long-standing edentulism. So many of our patients who come to us wanting for solutions to get back their lost teeth, there are different treatment options that one can offer. Some of us may consider doing bilateral sinus grafting, guided bone regeneration, doing conventional implant placement, and loading the implant 6 to 8 months, like my good friend Dr. Shaurabh, who's an expert in implant grafting solutions. Or somebody like me might give an option of doing an all-on-4 or zygoma implants, followed by an immediate loading with a provisional restoration. So both these treatment options are ethically and conventionally correct in executions, but they are two different perspectives that we need to consider for the patient. But as a clinician, what are the factors that I look at when doing grafting of the atrophic jaws? I feel grafting is little more invasive, more time consuming, more technique sensitive, and definitely you need a lot of skill set to do grafting procedures. And as well, most of the patients who come to us with atrophic jaws are aged patients. Considering their morbidity, I feel graftless solutions are even more better when it comes to atrophic jaw management. Describing graftless implant rehabilitation, Dr. Saj Jivraj has given us an excellent outline of what are all the factors that one need to consider in giving graftless solutions for edentulous patients. And today I shall be reiterating a lot of what Dr. Saj Jivraj has explained in his textbook on graftless solutions for edentulous patients. And I shall be sharing you my experience with what are the factors that I normally look at when I rehabilitate atrophic jaw patients with graftless implant solutions. So this is our first patient, Mrs. Lalita, who comes to us with severe atrophic jaws with most of the tooth which are missing. And what kind of rehabilitation I feel is better for this patient? I make this decision whether to choose a removable implant prosthesis or a fixed implant prosthesis on two factors. Number one is the lip support. If the patient's lip support is inadequate, like you see in this picture on this profile view, because of excessive atrophy of the bone, the patient's lip has completely lost the support that it had previously. So if I have to go for a fixed implant prosthesis, getting back that lip support may be a huge challenge unless I do extensive grafting procedures. The second factor I normally consider is the lip dynamics. Someone who has excessive lip dynamics might showcase or might make the junction between the prosthesis and the tissues visible during speaking or during smiling, which I'm sure is not going to be a very good treatment outcome. So considering these two factors, a patient who has lost the lip support because of alveolar atrophy or someone who has high lip dynamics, I think choosing a removable prosthesis or an implant supported removable prosthesis may be a good choice. But if we need to go for an implant retained fixed options, there are a host of factors that we need to consider. Considering the medical compromised nature of this patient and the severe alveolar atrophy with complete lack of lip support, I had to choose an implant supported removable prosthesis in the mandible and a completely removable denture in the maxilla. And that's how we gained back the lip support in this patient with an overdenture. But when it comes to fixed implant prosthesis, I am sure graftless solutions has given us a great opportunity to rehabilitate these old grandmothers and grandfathers who come to us for restorations and rehabilitation of their teeth. So for implant placement, there are potential areas of bone that is available in these jaws. This is a classification given by our North American colleagues, Dr. Bedrosian, who classified the maxilla into zones 1, 2, 3, and extramaxillary sites such as zygoma. So generally, when you have bone available in all the three zones, that's zone 1, 2, and 3, we may get away with placing 6 to 8 straight implants and restoring them with fixed prosthesis more comfortably. But when you don't have enough bone in the zone 3 and just as bone is available in zone 1 and 2, then that is when the all-on-4 treatment concept is predominantly practiced. And when you have bone available in just the zone 1, then you have to consider going for zygomatic implants in the posterior and just 2 straight implants in the anterior. And if there is no bone in all the 3 zones of the maxilla, that is when we choose quad zygoma. So these are some of the commonly employed graftless solutions for all these atrophic jaws or atrophic maxillas that we practice. So why do I opt for graftless in these patients? So the advantage of using graftless is I have the comfort of immediate loading. I can give the patient a prosthesis on the same day of my implant surgery. The results are highly predictable with enough evidence to show that graftless solutions are a good choice of treatment for atrophic jaw management. And all the more, these patients will not need to wear any removable denture during the course of the treatment, as a result of which the comfort is significantly better. And cost-wise, graftless solutions reduce the cost, which is another major advantage for our patients. So I'm a simple surgeon. I try to give limited promises to my patients who come to me asking for rehabilitation of atrophic jaws. When I don't offer them grafts, I can offer them same day fixed teeth, but with shortened dental arch. So what are we exactly dealing with in these aged patients who need rehabilitation along with atrophy of maxilla and mandible? So these are aged patients medically compromised with severe alveolar atrophy, poor quality of bone that gives a huge challenge for all of us to get good primary stability when we place implants in these poor quality bone. And all the more reduced restorative space because of supraeruption of the opposing teeth because of long-standing edentulosum. And there's always financial constraint. So the conventional approach that we can consider is extraction of terminally failing dentition followed by a removable provisional denture. And then 4 to 6 months later, we can go for implant placement, then again provisionals, and then again we can go for final prosthesis, which is a conventional way of doing things. But what I do prefer is a graftless solution, such as the all-on-4, where we have the advantage of doing a full arch provisional on the same day of implant placement, immediately loading, and all the more it's a graftless solution. So why immediate loading? I can do the extraction, implant placement, provisionalization all at one go, wait for 6 months, then give a final restoration. The advantages are less surgical procedures, maximum comfort because the patient does not need to wear removable dentures, and reduced cost. So now let us consider some of the factors that we need to look at before treatment planning with graftless solutions. So the first point that, or the first aspect that I look at in these patients is positioning my maxillary central incisors. So this is patient Meenakshi, who works at the Life Insurance Corporation. Her job is to daily communicate with a lot of people and look at the periodontal nature of all her tooth and look at the severe compromise in the health of the existing dentition and the alveolar atrophy that is very evident on the OPG. So when I start treatment planning for Mrs. Meenakshi, the first point that I consider is positioning the maxillary central incisor. So where do I want my incisal edge to end up in this patient? So positioning incisal edge has been conventionally taught to us from the days of complete denture prosthodontics. Our incisal exposure that we look at is 2 mm vertically, and the horizontal position of the maxillary central incisor is decided by the phonetics. The angulation is decided by the phonetics. So this is how we completed Mrs. Meenakshi with adequate amount of incisal exposure at rest and at smile. So that is a key factor. So what is it that we need to consider when I decide the incisal edge position? So if you look at the previous slide, I have reduced the incisal exposure at the end result. In order to do that, I need to take my incisors more superiorly. So to do that, I may have to do some bone reduction to take my implants further up ahead so that I get enough prosthetic space for my prosthesis. So this is another patient, Mr. Manoharan. Again, look at the amount of incisal exposure. So again, we planned for a graftless solution. He was planning a trip to Canada and he had limited time for rehabilitating his terminally failing dentition, and we planned for an all-on-4 implants for him. And the first point that I again emphasize here is deciding where you want to put your incisal edge. And that is the amount of incisal edge that we come at the end of a treatment. And to achieve this, I may have to do some amount of bone reduction to take my incisors superiorly further up ahead. The next factor that I consider in treatment planning with graftless solution is to get adequate restorative space. So what is the restorative space? Restorative space is the space that is available between the maxilla and mandible for us to place a prosthesis there. So this restorative space is decided by what kind of prosthesis we are planning for that patient. So planning the right restoration starts in the beginning of treatment planning. So if we look at a milled titanium acrylic hybrid prosthesis, we may need 30 to 32 millimeters of restorative space between the maxilla and the mandible. And if there is any less than that space that is available, it is always better to go for a PFM bridge in such situations. So choosing the right prosthesis starts from day one of our treatment planning. So when you have minimum space less than 15 mm per arch or less than 30 mm, the best choice would be to go for a PFM or a porcelain fused zirconia prosthesis. When you have moderate space available, you can look for milled titanium with acrylic prosthesis. And when you have excessive space available, then you can consider going for a removable implant supported overdenture. So for Mr. Manohar, we again, the challenge that we were facing is a lot of periodontally poor teeth, and patient would not want to wear any removable complete dentures. Patient does not want to go for grafting procedures. So apart from deciding on the incisal edge position, the factor that here I would like to emphasize is on the restorative space. So you can appreciate the significant supra-eruption of the teeth and complete loss of the restorative space. So when I need to plan my prosthesis, when I need to plan my rehabilitation for Mr. Palani, I had to do some amount of bone reduction in order to gain back that restorative space. So this becomes very crucial during my treatment planning stage. So after my bone reduction, I could place 6 straight implants and all-on-4 in the mandible, and he was given a provisional restoration within few days after the implant surgery. But the provisional prosthesis is very clearly indicating that the restorative space that we expected is not adequate enough for a hybrid prosthesis. So it was very clear the patient comes back to us after 3 months with a fractured provisional restoration, which is again an indication that the restorative space that we have gained was inadequate for Mr. Manohar. So the best prosthesis for Mr. Manohar was a PFM prosthesis. So generally, if you do not have adequate restorative space, you may end up with mechanical complications such as fracture of the prosthesis or screw loosening. And if you're going to leave unnoticed, it's going to end up with implant failure or peri-implantitis. So we chose the final prosthesis as a PFM bridge because of the reduced restorative space. And this is how he was rehabilitated. And that was enough restorative space for a PFM bridge. This is yet another patient with significant loss of restorative space because of supraeruption of the opposing arch. And you can appreciate the pyriform rim and the planned bone reduction. But when you plan reducing bone for gaining restorative space, it is a fine balance, the amount of bone that you reduce to gain the space and leaving back adequate bone for you to place implants. So this is how we have reduced, placed little short implants. And when you splint all these implants, I'm sure the longevity is going to be definitely good for these patients. And placing aggressively threaded implants for good primary stability. And this is how Mrs. Vasanthi was rehabilitated with a PFM bridge, again with reduced restorative space. But we cannot gain more restorative space by more bone reduction because that will compromise on our implant placement. And this is how she was completed as a happy patient. So third factor that I would like to consider is the smile line of the patient. So we very well know that there are three different types of smile line: high smile line, or average, or low smile line. So when you have an edentulous patient, we plan for rehabilitation. When the patient gives a wide, broad smile because of either the lip dynamics or because of high smile line that was pre-existent, a patient might end up with visibility of the alveolar bone. So when you do a fixed implant restoration in such patients, if we do not consider bone reduction, the transition zone between the prosthesis and the tissue may become visible at the end of our treatment. And I am sure that is not going to be a good outcome, and our patients are not going to be happy with the transition zone visible. So it is generally recommended to reduce the bone in order to gain or push the transition zone between the prosthesis and the tissues underneath or beneath the lips to eliminate the display line in the prosthesis. So the fourth factor that we need to consider is the emergence profile. So as we already saw, when you have patients with extreme amount of alveolar atrophy, so these patients will completely have loss of lip support. So when you plan for a prosthesis, in order to gain that lip support, you need to give three options to the patient. Either you can do an osteotomy of the maxilla and bring the maxilla forward, do enormous amount of onlay bone grafting, or we think these two procedures are very invasive, we may end up with doing a removable prosthesis. But if you go for a graftless solution, the problem that we have in such patients is when you place implants and in order to gain that lip support, if you fix a prosthesis way anterior to that of the implant, you end up with a labial shelf or a ledge labial to the prosthesis underneath the lip. And I am sure it is definitely not a hygienic design. And the patients are not going to feel comfortable, the food going and sitting on top of the prosthesis all the time. So what is the solution we have for such situation? So we have the possibility of taking the implants more superiorly and developing a good emergence profile on the prosthesis, which is more smooth and more elegant and does not have that labial ledge or shelf, and that is going to be a hygienic design. Again, in order to achieve this, we need to do some amount of bone reduction, take the implants further more superiorly, but we need to have enough bone to hold implants. So that is a challenge when you deal with such patients with complete lack of lip support and severe alveolar atrophy. So I have been repeatedly saying bone reduction, which is a huge paradigm shift from what we have been practicing or learning over these many years. we have always been focusing on bone preservation, teeth preservation, and bone generation or guided bone regeneration. But now when we go to graftless solution, it is a huge paradigm shift. We are now looking at the reasons for reducing the available bone. So the factors that we consider for bone reduction are if the lip length is inadequate, or if the smile line is a high smile line, or in order to get a proper emergence of the restoration, or to gain back the lost restorative space, the key factor that we need to perform is bone reduction. So what are the other reasons of reducing bone before placing implants when we opt for graftless solutions? Number one, we need to gain a flat alveolar table for placing implants, which is all the more convenient. And the second thing is when you do bone reduction, the transition zone between the prosthesis and the tissues is going to go away from the tongue zone. And that is going to become significantly important for good phonetics, and it prevents saliva from drooling through the junction of the prosthesis and the tissues. And all the more when you have more restorative space, the strength of our prosthesis is also going to become better, and we are going to have high longevity for the restorations that we perform. So this is the lost restorative space, pneumatized sinuses, reduced restorative space. So we have plenty of treatment choices like All-on-4 or zygomatic implants with good amount of bone reduction, All-on-4 in the mandible, gain back the restorative space, and then plan for restoration. So the next point that I would like to emphasize is gaining adequate antero-posterior spread of implants when it comes to All-on-4. So what is the purpose of doing this AP spread? When you have good AP spread, your prosthesis will have less cantilever. But at the same time, when you have to do good AP spread, we cannot do implants by forgetting our maxillary sinuses. So this was one such incident or one such patient for whom I did an All-on-4 in the post-COVID era. And I had placed my implants in a free-handed surgery, and I had left my posterior implants into the maxillary sinus. So I think planning to position your posterior implants by bypassing the sinus and getting enough AP spread is a challenge in these patients. So how do I bypass the maxillary sinus at the same time try to get good antero-posterior spread with my implants? So I need to know where my anterior wall of sinus is present in order to position my implant. So a simple trick that I routinely follow is make a small bony window in the anterior wall of the sinus, try to trace the anterior wall of the maxillary sinus, and position my posterior implant first, just anterior to that line. And the point that I take into consideration here is if I'm able to get with a tilting of 45°, it's well and good I can do an All-on-4 for this patient. But if the angulation exceeds 45°, it is always better to opt for zygomatic implants. So this is the key point that decides whether we are going to do an All-on-4 or zygoma for our patients. The other options of getting good antero-posterior spread is using trans-sinus implants, where we can use little long implants of length approximately 20-22 millimeters, bypass the sinus, get good alveolar purchase with the pyriform rim, and you can have better antero-posterior spread. But again, the major advantage of increasing the AP spread is reducing cantilever. But whenever we decide on that, it's important that we should be aware of the anatomy of the region and make sure that our implants are bypassing the maxillary sinus. But when it comes to the mandible, at times we face problems like when the mental foramen is more anteriorly, we do not have enough space to spread out our implants. So that is when small minor procedures like nerve transposition or nerve repositioning will help us in getting back or gaining back that AP spread in the mandible. The other option is tilting the implants and bypassing the inferior alveolar nerve. But again, when we do a free-handed implant surgery, doing such kind of procedures is definitely not recommended. When we plan for a guided surgery, probably such kind of maneuvers can be taken into consideration for placing the implant more posteriorly with better AP spread. So the next crucial factor that we need to consider is gaining good occlusion for the patient. So when it comes to full mouth rehabilitation, occlusion is very important. What are the points that we need to look at when you give an occlusion or establish an occlusion? Though there are different occlusal schemes, the literature does not show us clearly one occlusal scheme is better than the other. So what I look at when I do full mouth rehabilitation is try to achieve equal intensity occlusal contacts in as much of occlusal points as possible with a shared kind of occlusal scheme. I always prefer to have splinting of all my implants with shallow guidance and make sure that when the patient is in centric contacts, the condyles are fully seated in the fossa. So these are the points that you need to look at when you decide on occlusion. Try to avoid eccentric contacts, get maximum occlusal contacts in centric. So occlusion in full fixed solution is also another important factor, as I already told you. So we all know that the occlusal forces that are generated in our jaws is more in the posteriors. The occlusal forces generated in the anterior teeth is less. So that is the reason why when it comes to all-on-4 prosthesis, we try to establish more and more occlusal contacts in the anteriors. With the help of a shortened arch, we reduce the posterior occlusal contacts. So that is another way in which the implants are going to have better longevity and reduced occlusal forces being transmitted to them. So this is how we gain equal intensity occlusal contacts in as many teeth as possible. So trying to establish equal intensity contacts. So the emphasis that I have been putting so far is about the bone reduction that we normally do with graftless protocols. So when it comes to bone reduction, it is good to have a reduction guide in order to understand how much of bone reduction is crucial for the patient. So there are so many ways of doing a guide to plan for the amount of bone reduction that is necessary for the patient. So we can duplicate the existing denture, place it on the patient's mouth, and decide how much of bone reduction is necessary to get the space for the pink prosthetics, and then do the bone reduction, which is in a way better for us to give more predictable results at the end of treatment. And then the next factor is avoiding cantilever. What does a cantilever do? As we all know, cantilevers are detrimental for the prosthesis. So if you're going to have long cantilevers, the common problems that we face is prosthetic failures or biomechanical failures and fracture of the prosthesis. The other problems that we may end up is peri-implant bone loss in the distal most implant. So how much cantilever is acceptable? So you can use 15 mm of cantilever, but what I routinely do is I try to restrict my cantilever by just doing 1 molar as a cantilever when I plan for a graftless all-on-4 implant placement for my patient. If we have long cantilevers, you can easily see such situations where patients come back to us with fracture of prosthesis in the cantilever region. And this is more so when it comes to provisional restorations, because they easily fracture when the patients try to bite hard with the posterior teeth. So when you have bone available just in zone 1, we have other graftless solutions such as the all-on-4 hybrid where you can place implants, 2 in the anterior and 2 in the zygoma with the help of extramaxillary anchorage. So this is Mr. Amartarajan again, a patient who had severe alveolar bone loss with no bone in zone 2 and zone 3. So we planned for an all-on-4 hybrid for the patient. So that is the bone window that is created in the posterior wall of the maxillary sinus. And that's the zygomatic implant that is being positioned. And that's the AP spread of implants with 2 zygoma and 2 implants in the anterior. And that's the all-on-4 hybrid. And that's the provisional prosthesis that is delivered to the patient on the same week of the implant surgery. So that's the all-on-4 zygoma. But sometimes you may have patients who have complete absence of bone in all the 3 zones of the maxilla, zone 1, zone 2, and zone 3. So here is Mrs. Tirupurasundari, a 68-year-old female who does not want to wear dentures, who does not want to go for grafting. And when we look at the CBCT of the patient, it is very clear that the patient has severe alveolar atrophy with absolutely no bone whatsoever in all the 3 zones of the maxilla. So the key factors that we consider in graftless rehabilitation in these patients are, we try to use tilted implants, engaging the non-alveolar bone, and then proper implant design, proper osteotomy design. So when it comes to graftless rehabilitation, another key challenge that we face is achieving good primary stability with implants. So in order to get good primary stability, we need to engage the cortical bone whenever possible. So the cortical bones that are available in the maxilla are in the pyriform rim or in the zygoma. So when you engage the cortical bone, the primary stability is higher. We have the option of doing immediate loading in these patients. The other possibility of gaining good primary stability is doing a proper osteotomy under preparation, or using bone condensation techniques, or using densa burrs, or using implants with deep threads, aggressive implants, tapered implant design. So all of these help us in gaining good primary stability. So in Mrs. Tirupurasundari, as I told you, we can appreciate the extensive amount of alveolar atrophy. So the patient was decided for a quad zygoma. So we planned for zygomatic implants in all, in 2 on each side. And that's the bony window that is created on the posterior wall of the maxillary sinus. And that's the 2 zygomas on either side with good emergence. And that is how the patient was rehabilitated as a graftless solution, followed by an immediate provisional restoration. So what is the importance of provisional restoration? So provisional restoration is a key factor when it comes to graftless solutions. A good provisional restoration is necessary for good tissue contouring, and that will give better results when we look back at the patient at the time of final prosthesis. But there are a few points that we need to notice when deciding provisional restorations. It is regarding the occlusion and the cantilevers. So it is important that we have minimum cantilever and proper occlusion for the provisionals to be long lasting. So now we have come to the end of the presentation. So now what are the take home messages that I would like to give when it comes to graftless rehabilitation for success of the treatment? So I would consider these few points during my treatment planning when it comes to graftless rehabilitation, such as lip support, gaining adequate restorative space, having good smile length, smile line and lip length. If we have the junction visible because of a high smile line, considering bone reduction to gain all these factors, and good emergence profile, provisionalization, good AP spread of implants, reducing the cantilevers, and establishing good occlusion in these patients. And apart from that, some technical factors that we need to consider for high success when it comes to graftless rehabilitation are using the implants that give us very high primary stability, provide adequate restorative space, and good AP spread of implants. So with this, I would like to finish my presentation saying that graftless solution has opened us new doors, and it has given us wide opportunities to rehabilitate these old grandfathers and grandmothers who have a lot of medical compromised situation, as well a lot of comorbidities. And I am sure graftless solution with an immediate loading option will definitely be a good choice of treatment for these patients. And learning to do new techniques and new graftless solutions will always improve the treatment outcome. But we need to consider all these factors that we discussed today whenever we make a treatment plan in these patients. So I would like to again thank all the audience for patient listening throughout my lecture. And I would like to thank dentistchannel.online for giving me this opportunity to share some of my experiences with graftless solutions. And thank you once again. So here I would like to pass on the mic to Ruben for any questions that I would like to answer. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. So here is the first question from Dr. Soumya Prakash. So they have asked how to bypass inferior alveolar.
If I understand the question, I think this is regarding when I spoke about the anterior posterior spread to bypass the inferior alveolar nerve and position implants more posteriorly. But as I mentioned earlier, it is not something that we can perform as a free-handed surgery. So when you go for a guided implant surgery with a proper planning and a surgical guide, that becomes feasible. If that is not the case, then we need to go for nerve lateralization or nerve reposition and then bypass the inferior alveolar nerve and then position the implants as posterior as possible to get a good AP spread.
So you mean to say that case selection forms a very important factor for treatment?
Yeah, when it comes to bypassing the nerve, it is better to go for a guided surgery. So when you do a free-handed surgery, I think that is something that we cannot achieve with a lot of confidence as a free-handed surgery. Yeah.
Okay, so now let's move on to the next question. How to place zygomatic implants without perforating the anatomic structure?
Again, zygomatic implant, knowing the anatomy of the zygoma is a key point or the key factor in doing a good zygomatic implant. So something as a beginner, I would like to suggest is, as I showed you in my presentation, it is good to have a 3D stereolithographic model of the patient's zygoma, understand the anatomy clearly, and then position the zygomatic implants. And I think that is something that will help you in avoiding any vital structures.
Yes,
and
sir.
the most feared area that everybody wants to avoid is entering into the orbit. And I'm sure that is something, a nightmare that no implantologist should face anytime in their life. But I'm sure if we reasonably understand the anatomy of the zygoma, it is easy to bypass the vital structure or the orbit and place a good zygomatic implant in these patients.
Yes, there will be a learning curve for such advanced techniques. So we need to understand the anatomy and concepts better to perform such surgery. So until then, we may take help of senior experts like Dr. Senthil.
Thank you. Sure.
So let's move on to the next question. Can we do zygoma implant using single quadrant? Like for single quadrant, can it be done?
Yeah, zygoma implants can be done in the single quadrant, but the point is you cannot load it as a lone standing implant. You need to splint it with the other implants on the other side of the arch. And one important point that I always prefer when I do a single quadrant zygomatic implant is try to achieve cross-arch stabilization. It does not need to be a zygoma implant on the opposite side. We can have a regular all-on-4 and one side zygoma and try to splint all the implants together, and that is possible. Or even if you have a single quadrant or partially edentulous situation, you can have one single implant in the anterior and one zygomatic implant and splint the implants together, and you can give them a restoration. But it is not good to have a non-splinted zygomatic implant. It is always preferred to splint the implants, and I think that will solve the problem.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. So the next question is, graftless solution is a very different school of thought that any implant or can any implantologist directly do with lot of, or does it require any lot of practice? So I believe there is learning curve for everything.
Yeah, graftless is definitely will need a learning curve. As I said, graftless solutions might look very easy, but again, that also has a lot of learning curve, a lot of factors that you need to understand in treatment planning, and some of the techniques that you need to master, especially when it comes to advanced surgical procedures like zygoma implant. I think that is definitely a value addition in your implant practice. And when you have graftless solutions as a possibility to give to your patients, I'm sure you are opening up a new avenue of rehabilitation when it comes to atrophic jaws, which I think is a huge challenge when it comes to graftless solutions.
Yes, sir. I do agree with that. So that we always have to be broad and not loyal to one technique, so that we can accommodate different kinds of patients in our practice. So that would help patients also, and also to the dentist. In it's bi-directional, I believe. And then we have next question. Uh, is it that basal implant are more prone to fracture than conventional?
Okay, so I think regarding basal implants, I do not have any experience. I am a conventional implantologist, so I do not have much experience or knowledge about basal implants. But when it comes to conventional implant, fracture of an implant is a very rare finding that someone can have. Possibly if the patient is heavy bruxer, and if the implant positioning was not fine, probably you can have implant fractures, but otherwise it's a very, very rare situation that anybody can face. So but regarding basal implants, I do not have much experience, so I don't think I'm the right person to answer that question.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. And the next question is on supplementation. It's by Dr. Sridhar. Do you suggest vitamin D and calcium supplements or any other steroids post surgery?
uh, Vitamin D or other supplements, they do not have any literature evidence to show that they have significance in the postoperative period or in the preoperative period when it comes to implant surgery. But steroids, yes, of course, when we do extensive surgical procedures with wide opened flap, I routinely put these patients on steroids in the postoperative period in order to reduce the postoperative edema for a brief period of time. And that will help us in giving these patients prosthesis as early as possible, especially when it comes to zygomatic implants. We need to fix the prosthesis in a day or so. These steroids reduce the edema, and that will help us in giving the prosthesis as early as possible in these patients.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. And now we'll move on to the next question. Uh, so Dr. Soumya Prakash has another question, that what occlusion is best for the implant?
I think she asks about full mouth rehabilitation. So as I told you, when it comes to full mouth rehabilitation, there is no one occlusal scheme that is better than the other. But when you try to do a full arch restoration, it is always better to have as many occlusal contacts as possible. Try to distribute the occlusal load, splint the implants, share the occlusal load, and shallow occlusal contacts. Shallow occlusal contacts, what I mean by that is trying to have flat occlusal table or as flat as possible, not steep cusps. So when you have shallow occlusal contacts or shallow guidances, the amount of occlusal forces that are transmitted to the implants are minimized, and that will help in the longevity of the prosthesis as well as our implants. So,
Okay, sir.
and trying to minimize cantilever is also another factor that you need to consider when it comes to occlusion in these patients.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir. So it's a final question from myself. Sir, what would be the suture materials or the technique that you prefer? Is there any modification that you would like to suggest?
Yeah, something that I have not touched in graftless solutions is using guided surgery in graftless solutions. So now with the advent of plenty of guided options, you can you can plan your implants. Even zygomatic implants can be planned well ahead, and you have beautifully designed fabricated guides which help us in positioning the zygomatic implants with ease. And I think with somebody who has limited experience with opening and working in the zygoma, or limited experience in doing extensive surgical procedures, this grafted surgery is definitely a real boon. And that's another graftless solution. And one more graftless solution which I have not touched is the subperiosteal implants. So that's again yet another school of thought or school of implants that is coming up, very popular, like patient specific implants or subperiosteal implants. They also are a graftless solution, and that's another way of rehabilitating these atrophic jaws. And I think there is a lot of new studies and new work going on in these two areas on guided surgery and subperiosteal implants or patient specific implants. And I think that is going to be a new chapter that's going to become very popular in near future.